We welcome you into the JAXUSL Report, and boy, do we have some things to talk about today. Along with Mauricio Ruiz, I'm Cole Pepper. Coming up, we'll get into Lionel Messi and Inter Miami's play in the Leagues Cup and what that means for soccer here in the United States going forward, as well as a closer look at what's happening all around the USL Championship as we get down to the nitty-gritty. Just about 7 or so matches left for these teams competing for the postseason. But let's start with the Women's World Cup. Just completed this weekend, and we bring back Becky Berleigh to talk about what happened down under with Spain beating England to win the World Cup. Becky, let's talk about first your big takeaways. What did you make of this tournament as a whole?
I love this tournament. You know, I wish the times had been a little more conducive to the U.S. market because the games were so compelling that I wish more people had seen them, even though they set record numbers with all of that. Like, it was a great World Cup, one of the most entertaining in recent memory.
Mauricio, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, if you just talk about the quality of play on the field, we always talk about, you know, the women's game, regardless of what sport, it looks like a different game from the men's game, from the speed and the quality. I'll tell you what, this was about as entertaining of a game as I've seen, and really it was a spread. Even some of the new nations that were kind of coming up, the brand of football they were playing, the athleticism, the quality, it was very, very enjoyable to watch.
And Becky, I thought the drama in a lot of these matches was tremendous. If we get that in the Men's World Cup, we're talking about that for 4 years. I thought it was some great drama, and it produces a champion in Spain who had been sort of building up to this. And I'll ask this question, I think I know the answer to it, but did you find Spain to be a worthy champion?
Oh, absolutely. You know, anyone who's been following Spain for any length of time knows the success they've had at the youth levels. And you knew that was going to translate at some point. But to have it translate in 4 years to where they hadn't won a group stage to win the whole thing, that's impressive.
And Mauricio, you pointed out a lot of Barcelona flavor on that Spain team.
Yeah, a lot of coincidence that when the men won in 2012, there were 7 Barcelona players on and 7 starters on the Spanish national team, and this year on the women's team similar. I think it just speaks to when federation and club are aligned in youth development, eventually you see the product. It's not going to happen every time, but it certainly has happened twice with the Spain National Federation.
All right, let's talk about the United States here for a moment. Becky, obviously one of the first orders of business for the U.S. now is a coaching search because they'll be looking for the new leader. What's important there, and what are your expectations? What should the U.S. be looking for the next coach of the women's national team?
Wow, that's a great question because, you know, there's so many factors to consider. You know, having had experience at the international level, being a success at that level, and that pool gets real small real fast. And I think it's going to be really interesting because it feels like the U.S. is also in a bit of a transition in terms of generationally in between a little bit. And I think that's exciting for whoever comes in, but it's a big job, but also one that has a lot of promise.
And Mauricio, you've also touched on this transitional period for the U.S.
Yeah, absolutely. And Becky, I wonder if you think that this new hire, if they should focus on someone that really has an umbrella mentality of what should happen in the youth development and how that creates a pathway to our professional teams and obviously to our national teams, rather than just focus on our first team. There's always that discussion from a technical director standpoint versus just a head coach. What's your thought on that?
You know, that's a good question because as you talked about with the whole Barcelona thing, I mean, it is so much easier when there's sort of a shared vision and a shared plan of development. And, you know, our country is just so big and we have so many entities involved in development that makes that a challenge. And I think that's something that we have to consider as a country. How are we going to manage to compete with teams that don't face that same challenge?
And Becky, one of the big questions, of course, is, you know, considering the success the United States has had in the past, getting to and winning a final is really the expectation. Does there have to be any kind of a philosophical change here going forward based on the performance from this past World Cup?
You know, I don't think anyone wants to talk about lowering expectations for the U.S., but I do think we have to talk about, like, from an identity standpoint, like, that's a challenge for us. I mean, when you look at certain countries, it's like very clear what their identity is. And I think we have had a clear identity in the past in terms of our, you know, our grittiness, our fitness, our ability to sort of have this mentality that surpasses a lot of countries. But at the same time, like, we are now a country that can develop really technical and tactical players. So how do we integrate those two mindsets to be an identity that's really unbeatable?
Yeah, if you can have the best fitness and the best technical ability. Pretty good combination if you can get there.
Well, and that's the idea. And I think, in our trip to the Netherlands about a month and a half ago, around the Champions League, which saw Barcelona win in a convincing fashion, the way it was an entertaining game. We got to spend time with the Netherlands Federation and listen to their direct approach to development and how they're now investing into their domestic league to make sure that they're all growing together. And there's an intentionality behind that. And I think that's what I'd love to see here as well, that our U.S. Soccer Federation, Cindy Parlow-Cohen is working with the leagues to make sure that we have a development process. What that looks like, I don't have the answer to that, but it would be great to see some kind of integration. Well,
it's certainly 4 more years till the next Women's World Cup, but a lot of building for the U.S. for sure going forward. Becky, thanks so much for joining us again.
I love being with you guys. Thanks so much, and looking forward to watching this whole thing unfold.
Thanks, Becky.
All right, well, we go from the Women's World Cup to the most anticipated matchup in the world, perhaps, in soccer, which came in the United States in the final of the Leagues Cup, a new competition, and it was so anticipated, Mauricio, of course, because Lionel Messi leading Inter Miami to the first ever Leagues Cup champion, the first bit of hardware for Inter Miami, and what a match it was. First, your reaction to the game that went to penalty kicks to decide it.
Well, Nashville proposed to be a formidable opponent. They're a very, very good team. They have one of the better players in Mukhtar in attacking mid, and Walker Zimmerman, a World Cup player in the back line. And that atmosphere was fantastic. A lot of pink around in the crowd as well, even though it was in Nashville, but what a great atmosphere. Messi and Miami did what they've done the rest of the Leagues Cup, which is, to slow the game down, find pockets and play, and then when he has a few opportunities to execute, that wasn't the only one. He hit the post in the second half as well, and a goal that probably should have gone in. It's just impressive to see the level of execution. His play overall is kind of very much similar to the World Cup, to be honest. Kind of stays on the corner, finds space, walks around a lot. He was the most walked player in the World Cup, most distance walked in the World Cup, and he's doing a lot similar. But he's got a team that's playing around him, that understands that, and man, when he gets in front of that goal, you just see and you anticipate, and the whole crowd that sees anticipates. So it's a wonderful thing to watch, and it's exciting for U.S. soccer and for all the leagues that are here and what it means kind of next steps.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun to watch and see what happens there with Messi and his impact the rest of the season, and of course, U.S. Open Cup and other opportunities for him to show what he can do with Inter Miami. What does it mean for Messi's continuing impact in America that he was able to, in his first competition, lead Inter Miami to a championship?
Well, I think there's a couple things, the narratives, right? Are the teams that he's playing against and the players, is it a weaker opposition? Is he having his way with it? I think there's some truth to that, but he's done that his whole career. Right? He's kind of made people look silly, and he's really put teams on his back a lot of times. You take kind of the PSG days, but even his numbers there were pretty good as well. This is kind of what he does. Is arguably the best player that we've ever witnessed, play the football, play a football game. I think what it means is that he's come to a league. He's still very much alive. He's happy. You can see he's vibrant, and every stadium that he steps foot on going forward are going to have an expectation of similar performance, which is going to be great for crowds, going to be great for attendance. Whether he continues to do, he's played 10 games, scored in every single game. Amazing. That's impressive. To expect that's unreasonable, but he's been unreasonable so far, so why not?
All right, let's talk about his impact on this particular competition. Again, the Leagues Cup, just between MLS and Liga MX teams, maybe this adds a little bit of extra credibility to that competition, and maybe we could see it grow.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really fully understood what the Leagues Cup was. I think even a lot of soccer, avid fans had doubts or questions about what the league was. That as Inter Miami extended their play, people understood a little bit more, gave credibility. Now it's a league that for the teams, it's a $40 million bonus. It's a spot in the CONCACAF Champions League, so it means a lot for the teams that are playing. But it creates now this kind of intercontinental rivalry, and we could potentially be talking about expanding the Leagues Cup into Canada, into the CPL, into other Central American countries to kind of really make it a continental inter-club league, as other countries have it as well. I think we're on the verge of something that could be special and bringing validity to year one. Really on the back of Messi, I think it only speaks well for the league.
Kind of reminded me in a little way of what happened with the Players' Championship with Jack Nicklaus winning early on. That it made it, we knew this was a big tournament in golf. Same thing here with Messi winning this with Inter Miami. Makes it a big deal. It elevates it even beyond what it may have been before that. Hey, remember, we're coming up on the start of JAXUSL. The men and women will both be playing in the future, and you can be a part of it right now by getting your season tickets locked in. Just go to JAXUSL.com. $25 will save your spot for season tickets for the men's team and the women's team. We'll have a lot more news coming up in the coming months on that front. Also, right now, it's a great opportunity for you to continue to take advantage of a great partnership that we have right now with Donato's. You get a free large 2-topping pizza when you spend $10, and you can enter to win for a new Hisense Smart TV. You can just go to JAXUSL.com/free pizza to enter to win and get your free Donato's 2-topping pizza with a purchase of $10 or more. Just go to JAXUSL.com for the details. All right, let's take a look now at Mauricio's Corner and the action around JAXUSL and the USL Championship in particular. And you take a look at the results from this past week, and you see some goals being scored once again around the USL. Only one 0-0 contest, and that was a big one involving San Antonio. We'll get to that in just a moment. But some of these results, very, very impressive when you start talking about the strings that are happening. And as we get closer and closer to the playoffs, you get some teams that are really coming into form.
Well, I mean, if you look at the top of the screen, in the second place there, OC, Orange County, playing Charleston Battery, one of the better teams in the league. But, man, what a run Orange County are on right now. And a couple steps down, Indy were really struggling for a while versus El Paso that were really doing extremely well. And now the tables have completely reversed, and a great win for Indy. That'll be our game of the week we'll talk about. But, yeah, like Sac Republic just continue on their run. But I love at the bottom of the screen there, Miami getting that greedy result. Hartford struggling this year since they fired Tab Ramos. But Miami just continues to be a conversation for a playoff spot.
All right, let's take a look at the table as it stands right now in the Western Conference. See Sacramento Republic with 1 point ahead of San Antonio FC, but Orange County SC on a roll right now. 6 straight wins. They've won 9 of their last 10. This is the hottest team in the league right now.
They really are, and at one point, they weren't even in a playoff spot, right? We're talking about them as one of the bottom 4 teams there, but that's what being hot and getting on the run is, and we have about 7-8 weeks left in the season, and if they can continue this or even a part of this, they're going to be contending for a home playoff game in the first round.
All 3 of the top teams in the Western Conference standings unbeaten in their last 5, so all of them playing good soccer right now. In the Eastern Conference, well, Pittsburgh Riverhounds with a 3-point edge, but Tampa Bay Rowdies right there. Rowdies are in good shape right now as we look ahead. And Indy 11 starting to find their groove a little.
They really are, and you see there on our graphics, 7 away wins this year, which is the highest in the league. Difficult to win away in this league as far as you kind of go cross country, you change time zones, weather. But there's a bit of messy, Cole. I mean, it looks a certain way, but there's so many teams with games in hand here that in the next 2-3 weeks, as these games in hand start kind of evening out, it'll be really interesting to see who makes up ground. You're looking at Memphis in 4th place. They got 2-3 games in hand on the teams on top of the league. If they're able to cover their spread and get as many points as possible, we'll be talking about Memphis as 1st or 2nd place by week's end.
All right, those are the standings in the USL Championship. But now let's take a closer look at our game of the week, and it had some added significance for soccer fans from Jacksonville because you had the matchup of Mark Lowry, the former Armada head coach, his 2 USL Championship teams that he has coached. He was at El Paso, then went this year to Indy 11, and this was a game I think really tugged at his heart quite a bit to play here to be coaching against his old team.
Yeah, and El Paso gave him an opportunity once he left Jacksonville to really start the franchise in El Paso. He was the first coach that carried that franchise. Went to 2 Western Conference Finals, did extremely well. He's really well beloved there, him and his staff. So getting an opportunity to go to Indy. This is their first time back to El Paso in 2 years since they left. So there's a lot in play here. And the point is, El Paso is pretty much a roster that he's built. Now, he's taken some players, have gone with him, but this team, they look very similar for the reason that he's really helped build this team.
A lot of familiarity in terms of the players, the personnel, a lot of familiarity in terms of the styles as well, as we'll see in the highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll take it to the highlights, and you can see El Paso here in blue on the high press, and Coach Lyra is always a really high pressing team, so they maintain that. They were able to pick the ball up off a sloppy pass. Really, 10 minutes in, should have been 1-0 for El Paso.
Well, and the opportunities, when they come, you got to take advantage of them. You mentioned whether you're playing at home or away, and therefore El Paso trying to get the goal, but they do find a way to get the early lead.
Yeah, really good patient possession. See Indy in red, really good defensive block, but Asante did not track his runner, and first goal for El Paso by Carullo on the back post, so nice little header.
Indy in the second half now with Jack Blake, former Jacksonville player, setting things up.
Yeah, and Gansati getting on the end of it. True center forward, one of the better players in the league as well. True striker, just getting his toll on the ball to make it a 1-1.
Now here we go, just a few minutes later, and look at this opportunity for a fullback to come forward.
Yeah, and talking about a back and forth score here, and probably the goal of his life, and a lot of traffic there in front of the keeper. A good knuckleball, really couldn't see into the last minute, and go back up top 2-1 with only a few minutes. And
it didn't take long for Indy to have another shot at it.
Well, and Guensati, just a good target forward, plays the ball off of him, and Blake gets a shot and gets saved, but not for very long.
And once again, played in from a wide position, and the header knocked away. We saw a lot of these balls, whether it was set pieces or long balls played into the box, that created the opportunities for Indy.
Yeah, and players just falling asleep, and you see here, once again, just a player falling asleep off of his mark, and a really good run from Martinez coming off the bench, playing off the shoulder of the defender, and you see Coach Mark Lari now up 3-2, being down 1-0, then down 2-1, now you're up 3-2 with 20 minutes left. Can we keep our heads controlled? And eventually they come out there with the win. It
was a game with a lot of back and forth and emotion in it, but as it turns out, again, a 3-2 win for Indy, who continue to play. They've won 3 straight here in the East. All right, coming up next week, we'll have another matchup in our Game of the Week presented by GOTW with Charleston Battery and Memphis 901. This is a matchup in the East that's going to really impact the playoff race. As we mentioned, some teams with games in hand. Memphis is certainly one of those.
Well, and I think this game is super important for Memphis, which is why I picked, because now the games start becoming games of importance, right? So now it's not just about playing, about getting to know each other. Now you really have to win. And Memphis has to take points away from teams that are above them. So right now, Battery is in 3rd place, Memphis is in 4th. However, Memphis has those games in hand. So if you can take points away from teams above you, you're going to start climbing, pushing people down. Memphis, you won't be surprised. They haven't been to the number 1 in the league yet, but you won't be surprised. If they get on a good run, we could be talking about them as number 1 going into the playoffs.
We have, again, about a little less than 2 months remaining till the playoffs begin in the USL Championship, and we'll be following it each and every week. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel to get the very latest from JAXUSL. For Mauricio Ruiz and for Becky Berleigh, I'm Cole Pepper. Thanks so much for watching. We'll talk to you next week.